Welcome to the channel where we dive deep into the fascinating and mysterious world of rare coins, where everyday pocket change can turn into life-changing treasure, and today's story takes us back to a time when history, art, and a little bit of minting magic collided to create one of the most talked about coins in numismatic circles, the 1945 Wheat Penny. A tiny copper coin that has gained legendary status among collectors, rumored to be worth a staggering $25 million because of its unusual errors, its rare minting mistakes, and the extraordinary set of circumstances that have turned it from a simple 1-cent coin into a priceless artifact of American history. Imagine holding in your hand a piece of metal that millions of people have seen before, but only a handful have ever truly looked at closely enough to recognize its hidden potential. The 1945 Wheat Penny represents the end of an era. World War II was coming to a close, the U.S. Mint was operating at full force, and coins were being struck by the billions to fuel a booming post-war economy. But somewhere within the controlled chaos of the minting process, something unexpected happened. It's in these mistakes, these rare, almost accidental deviations from perfection, that numismatic legends are born. The story of the 1945 Wheat Penny's immense value begins with its history. This was a year when copper was in short supply due to the war effort, and the U.S. Mint had experimented with alternative metals for the Lincoln cent just 2 years prior, in 1943, when pennies were made of zinc-coated steel instead of copper. By 1945, the Mint had returned to copper alloy production, but remnants of wartime experimentation still lingered. Some planchets, those small metal discs that become coins, may have been left over from previous years or mixed accidentally, creating a perfect storm for mint errors. Among the most intriguing of these possibilities is the existence of a 1945 Wheat Penny struck on a steel planchet from 1943, or even a transitional bronze planchet from earlier minting batches. Imagine finding a coin that appears copper but weighs differently, has a slightly altered tone, or even shows magnetic properties. These subtle details can make all the difference. A 1945 Wheat Penny struck on the wrong planchet could easily be worth millions due to its rarity and historical significance. But the mystery doesn't stop there. The Mint in 1945 produced pennies at 3 major locations, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and each had its own quirks, differences in die wear, and unique strike characteristics. Collectors have identified varieties that include double dies, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, and even die cracks that run dramatically across the coin's surface. One of the most valuable and visually striking of these is the double die obverse error, where the inscriptions such as, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," or the date, 1945, appear doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. This doubling can be strong and easily visible under magnification or even to the naked eye in extreme cases. A perfectly preserved 1945 double die Wheat Penny, especially one struck in copper with a full red luster, could easily fetch astronomical sums at auction. Some experts suggest that the coin rumored to have sold for $25 million may have been one such double die error combined with a planchet anomaly, essentially a perfect storm of minting mistakes wrapped into a single cent. Another key factor that adds immense value is condition. The difference between a circulated and an uncirculated coin can mean hundreds, thousands, or even millions of dollars. Many 1945 pennies were spent, carried, and handled for decades, making high-grade examples exceedingly rare. Coins graded MS-68 or higher by top-tier grading services such as PCGS or NGC are almost unheard of, and when combined with a major mint error, their scarcity becomes almost mythical. Picture a 1945 Wheat Penny, perfectly struck, with brilliant copper-red shine, untouched by time, carrying a rare die error. Such a specimen would indeed be the holy grail for collectors and investors alike. The fascination with the 1945 Wheat Penny isn't only about the metal or minting process, it's also about the story it tells. This coin represents a transitional moment in American history. The world was emerging from the devastation of war, materials were shifting back from military to civilian use, and the minting process was adapting once again to peacetime production. Amidst this transition, errors were almost inevitable. Whether it was a worker misfeeding a planchet, a die being reused beyond its lifespan, or leftover wartime steel blanks accidentally mixed into the copper batch, these human and mechanical inconsistencies have created a treasure trove for modern numismatists. The rumor of a $25 million 1945 Wheat Penny likely stems from a coin that combined multiple rare features, perhaps a wrong planchet error, a double die obverse, and pristine mint state preservation. Some reports suggest that this extraordinary coin surfaced in a private collection, having been unknowingly kept in a family coin jar for generations before being authenticated and sold in a private auction, where its rarity and condition stunned even veteran appraisers. In numismatics, provenance, the history of ownership, can add immense prestige and value. If the coin came from a notable collection or had a story connecting it to a historical figure, its worth could multiply further. Collectors are drawn not just to the metal but to the narrative behind it, the unique fingerprint of history that every coin carries. The 1945 wheat penny has many subtle varieties that can lead to confusion but also opportunity. Some 1945 pennies have a small D or S mint mark below the date, while others from Philadelphia have none. These mint marks can be repunched, misaligned, or even appear to be doubled. There are also examples of die breaks near the rim, known as cuds, which occur when a piece of the die breaks away and leaves a raised, irregular blob of metal on the finished coin. These cuds are highly sought after, especially when they occur near major features like Lincoln's portrait or the date. Another variation that intrigues collectors is the off-center strike, where the design is shifted noticeably to one side because the planchet was not seated correctly when struck. Depending on the degree of off-center error, such coins can range from minor curiosities to extreme rarities worth thousands or more. Combine that with other features, like being struck on a thin or thick planchet, and the coin's uniqueness grows exponentially. One could also consider the possibility of a 1945 penny struck on a foreign planchet, since the U.S. Mint in the mid-1940s was striking coins not only for domestic circulation but also for foreign countries rebuilding after the war. Mistakes occasionally happened where foreign planchets were mixed with U.S. ones, resulting in pennies that are lighter, heavier, or have slightly different metallic compositions. A 1945 wheat penny struck on such a foreign planchet would be an incredible find, and its value could soar into the millions simply because no others like it might exist. Another layer of intrigue comes from toning, natural color changes that occur on the surface of copper coins over decades. Some 1945 wheat pennies have developed stunning rainbow hues due to unique storage conditions or chemical interactions with their environment. Collectors often pay massive premiums for coins with beautiful, naturally toned surfaces, especially when combined with high grades and rarity. A coin with exceptional eye appeal can break records even without a major mint error. The $25 million figure might seem almost unbelievable for a penny, but in the rare coin world, precedent exists. Coins like the 1794 flowing hair dollar, the 1933 double eagle, and the 1943 copper Lincoln cent have sold for millions, proving that rarity, condition, and history can transform small pieces of metal into treasures of unimaginable worth. The 1945 wheat penny's potential to reach such dizzying values comes from being part of that same narrative, an artifact that tells a deeper story about America, about the minting process, and about the pursuit of perfection in an imperfect world. It's fascinating to think that among billions of 1945 pennies struck, only a few could carry the traits that set them apart so dramatically. The vast majority were ordinary, serving their purpose in commerce and circulation, but somewhere, a few coins emerged that broke the mold, literally and figuratively. For collectors, that's the thrill, knowing that such treasures might still be out there, sitting unnoticed in a drawer, a coin album, or a forgotten piggy bank. This sense of possibility keeps numismatics alive and vibrant. Imagine the excitement of someone discovering that their old 1945 wheat penny, saved by a grandparent or found in loose change, is not just a sentimental keepsake but a one-of-a-kind rarity worth a fortune. The stories of such discoveries fuel dreams across generations. It's entirely possible that the 1945 penny rumored to be worth $25 million was initially dismissed as common, only to later be revealed, under the scrutiny of expert eyes and advanced testing, to be something extraordinary. Modern technology has made it easier than ever to identify these rare coins. Tools like digital microscopes, metal analyzers, and advanced grading techniques allow experts to detect subtle differences in alloy composition, strike pressure, and die characteristics. Sometimes, what looks like a minor defect to the untrained eye turns out to be a critical clue that confirms a coin's uniqueness. Next. 1946 wheat penny. Today we're uncovering the incredible story of the 1946 wheat penny, a coin that may seem ordinary at first glance but carries a jaw-dropping value of up to $22 million due to its rare errors, striking anomalies, and historical quirks that make it one of the most sought-after treasures among collectors and numismatists around the globe. And as we explore this coin, we'll unravel how a simple 1-cent piece from post-war America became a symbol of minting perfection gone wrong, and how these imperfections turned it into a fortune hidden in plain sight. Imagine holding a copper coin minted nearly 8 decades ago, a coin that passed through countless hands buying candy, newspapers, and small treats in a time when the world was just recovering from the devastation of World War II, yet unbeknownst to those who used it, one particular 1946 wheat penny carried within its metallic core a story so unique that decades later collectors would pay millions just to own it. The year 1946 marked a pivotal time for the United States Mint, as the nation transitioned from wartime production back to civilian minting, and materials once reserved for military equipment were once again available for coinage, yet this transition led to unexpected consequences. During World War II, the mint had shifted from copper to zinc-coated steel for pennies in 1943 to conserve copper for ammunition and wiring, but after the war, when the mint resumed using copper in 1944, leftover steel planchets and experimental materials found their way back into circulation. By 1946, most coins were back to their traditional bronze alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, yet human error, leftover materials, and imperfect machinery led to a small number of 1946 wheat pennies being struck on incorrect planchets, including steel blanks and foreign coin planchets, creating one of the rarest and most valuable coin errors in American history. These off-metal strikes are among the most prized by collectors because they represent a tangible mistake in an otherwise precise process, and in the case of the 1946 wheat penny, even a handful of such mistakes can mean the difference between a 1-cent coin and one worth millions. One of the most famous examples involves the 1946 wheat penny struck on a steel planchet leftover from 1943. This accidental combination created a coin that looks similar to the 1943 steel cents but bears the 1946 date, an impossible combination that should not exist under standard minting conditions. The contrast between the silvery color and the 1946 date immediately sets it apart, and numismatists have verified that these coins were not mere forgeries but genuine mint errors. Another rare variation of the 1946 penny involves a transitional error where the coin was struck on a foreign planchet meant for other countries, such as Belgium or the Philippines, as the U.S. Mint produced coins for Allied nations during and after the war. These planchets were slightly lighter or made from different alloys, creating subtle differences in weight, color, and ring tone when struck, and experts can identify them with precise measurements. The presence of these wrong metal or wrong planchet coins adds a layer of intrigue and scarcity, since they reflect a chaotic minting period when materials were being swapped, reused, and tested after wartime shortages. In addition to metal composition errors, the 1946 wheat penny is also known for striking errors like double dies, off-center strikes, and die cracks that add to its allure. A double die error occurs when the coin's design is accidentally impressed twice, creating a shadow or doubling effect on letters and numbers, particularly noticeable on the words "Liberty," "In God We Trust," or the date itself. In rare 1946 examples, this doubling is dramatic enough to be seen with the naked eye, and collectors prize these coins for their visual distinctiveness and rarity. Similarly, off-center strikes, where the design is misaligned due to a misfeed of the planchet, produce coins with portions of the design missing or shifted, making each one unique. The more dramatic the off-center error without cutting off the date or essential details, the more valuable the coin becomes. Die cracks, cuds, and clipped planchets add further interest, showing the wear and tear on minting equipment during a time when the mint was operating at high capacity and readjusting its machinery after wartime production. Each of these imperfections tells a story about the conditions under which the coin was made and why some of these flawed pieces became more valuable than perfect ones. One of the most mysterious aspects of the 1946 wheat penny's legend is the presence of coins struck on leftover steel planchets coated with zinc, possibly due to the accidental mixing of 1943 blanks that were never destroyed. While the official mint records indicate that steel cents were discontinued after 1943, the discovery of a few 1944 and 1946 steel examples proves that some escaped the melting pot. Their rarity cannot be overstated, only a handful have ever been authenticated, and each one is worth a fortune. Some of these have been confirmed through X-ray fluorescence analysis, revealing a distinct steel core with zinc plating rather than the expected bronze alloy. In the numismatic world, such a transitional error is a dream find, akin to discovering a rare gemstone in a mountain of gravel. The story of how one of these coins could reach a value of $22 million stems from both its extreme rarity and its condition. Coins that are discovered in mint state, showing no signs of circulation wear, retaining their original luster, and possessing sharp details, command astronomical prices, especially when certified by grading authorities like PCGS or NGC. A 1946 wheat penny with a steel core, flawless surfaces, and clear doubling could easily attract multimillion-dollar bids at auction because of its combination of historical context, minting anomaly, and near impossibility. It's important to note that the 1946 pennies also mark a symbolic turning point in the U.S. mint's operations, as the war's end restored traditional minting practices, but not without hiccups. Some experimental alloys and leftover blanks continued to appear for several years, creating what collectors call the transitional era for U.S. coins. This era produced several famous rarities, such as the 1943 copper penny and the 1944 steel penny, both of which share a kinship with the 1946 era coins in that they too were unintended survivors of material transitions. Collectors often group these coins together in high-end sets that tell the story of America's wartime economy and minting evolution, and among them, the 1946 wheat penny stands as the final chapter of that saga, a coin bridging the steel era and the full return to copper. Adding to its allure, some 1946 pennies show subtle die varieties that were initially overlooked but later became important identifiers for specialists. For example, variations in mint marks, particularly the D for Denver and S for San Francisco, have revealed small differences in positioning, size, and orientation, known as repunched mint marks, RPMs. These occur when the mint mark was hand-punched into the die more than once, slightly misaligned each time, producing a doubled or shadowed mint mark. These small anomalies can make certain 1946 D or 1946 S coins stand out among millions of others. Another fascinating type of error is the lamination error, where impurities or inconsistencies in the metal cause layers of the coin's surface to peel or flake off over time. While this might seem like damage, when it occurs naturally during the minting process and is well preserved, it's considered an authentic mint error that can boost a coin's value. Some 1946 wheat pennies display lamination peels across Lincoln's portrait or the wheat ears, adding a dramatic texture that tells of imperfections in the metal mix during post-war material recovery. In rare cases, 1946 wheat pennies have also been found with die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, transferring partial design elements from one side to the other. This results in ghost-like impressions of wheat stalks appearing near Lincoln's bust or traces of the profile visible on the reverse. These coins, especially when the clash is strong and distinct, attract significant attention from error enthusiasts because they represent a direct mishap in the minting process itself. The 1946 wheat penny also owes part of its legend to its historical and emotional significance. As the first fully post-war cent, it symbolized America's return to peace and normalcy. Millions of returning soldiers found themselves back in a consumer economy, and the humble penny represented the beginning of renewed prosperity. For collectors today, owning a 1946 wheat penny is not just about metal and error, it's about owning a piece of that post-war optimism. The allure of this coin also lies in the fact that anyone could potentially find one. Unlike gold coins or rare proofs, wheat pennies were circulated widely, and many still reside in old jars, drawers, and piggy banks across the country. Stories occasionally surface of people discovering unusual 1946 pennies that turn out to be rare errors worth thousands or even millions. The possibility that a $22 million treasure could be hiding in spare change adds to the mystique and excitement that fuels coin hunting and numismatics. Another reason the 1946 wheat penny commands such immense value in exceptional cases is the element of provenance, the story of where the coin came from. A coin with a documented chain of ownership, especially if previously held. Last. Today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating and talked about coins in American numismatic history, the 1944 wheat penny, a small copper coin that's rumored to be worth an astonishing $15 million because of its extraordinary errors, unique mistakes, and the mysteries that surround its creation. This coin has become one of the most famous and desirable pieces for collectors across the world, not just because it's old or rare, but because it tells a remarkable story of wartime transition, minting experimentation, and human error that turned a single penny into a multi-million-dollar treasure. The 1944 wheat penny has always had a special place in coin collecting history, but the few rare variants that exist today have captured imaginations and sparked bidding wars, with collectors and experts analyzing every mark, every imperfection, and every detail that could prove its authenticity and rarity. To understand why a coin that was meant to be worth only 1 cent is now valued at millions, we have to travel back to the year 1944, during World War II, when the United States Mint was under immense pressure to conserve metals for the war effort. Just 1 year earlier, in 1943, the Mint had made a historic change, replacing the traditional copper composition of pennies with zinc-coated steel to save copper for ammunition and military equipment. Those 1943 steel cents were famous for their silvery look, but they came with problems. They rusted easily, jammed vending machines, and were unpopular among the public, who often mistook them for dimes. So, in 1944, the Mint decided to revert to a copper-based composition, melting down spent shell casings from the war to create the bronze alloy used in the new pennies. However, during this chaotic transition, mistakes happened, and those mistakes would go on to create some of the most valuable coins ever produced by the U.S. Mint. Some leftover 1943 steel planchets, the blank metal discs used to strike coins, accidentally found their way into the presses in 1944, resulting in a handful of 1944 pennies being struck on steel instead of copper. These 1944 steel cents, which should not exist at all, are among the rarest coins in American history. They can be easily identified because they are magnetic, unlike their copper counterparts, and they have a distinct silvery color rather than the familiar reddish-brown of copper. Only a small number of these 1944 steel cents are known to exist, and each one discovered has fetched staggering prices at auctions, sometimes reaching into the millions. But beyond the steel error, there are many other fascinating varieties and minting anomalies that make the 1944 wheat penny such a captivating topic for collectors. Some 1944 cents show doubled dies, where the design elements, such as the date or lettering, appear doubled because of a misalignment during the die-making process. These double die errors can make a coin significantly more valuable, especially when the doubling is strong and visible to the naked eye. There are also off-center strikes, where the coin was not properly aligned in the press, resulting in part of the design being missing or misaligned, creating a crescent-shaped blank area. Then there are die cracks, die chips, repunched mint marks, and lamination errors, each of which tells its own story about what went wrong during the minting process. Some 1944 wheat pennies were struck on foreign planchets, such as those intended for Belgian or Mexican coins, because the Mint was producing coins for other countries during the war. These off-metal strikes can have slightly different weights, colors, or metallic compositions, and collectors who find them are often amazed by how such mistakes could occur in such a highly controlled environment. The Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints all produced 1944 wheat pennies, and each mint has its own set of potential errors and varieties. For example, the 1944 Denver Mint steel cent is considered one of the rarest of all U.S. coins, with only a few verified examples known. The 1944 San Francisco steel cent is also extremely rare, while the regular copper 1944 and 1944 coins are far more common. But it's the combination of these mistakes, the historical context, and the incredibly low survival numbers that make the 1944 era pennies worth millions. When you hold one of these coins, you're not just holding metal, you're holding a piece of history that slipped through the cracks of wartime production, a tiny artifact that defied expectations and became a legend. Collectors are fascinated by the mystery of how these steel planchets could have been left over from 1943 and somehow mixed in with the new bronze blanks in 1944. Some experts believe that a few leftover steel blanks were trapped in the crevices of minting machinery or storage bins, and when production resumed for the 1944 copper cents, those steel planchets were accidentally fed into the presses and struck with the 1944 dies. Because the error was never intentional and went unnoticed for decades, the number of these coins is extraordinarily low, perhaps only a few dozen in existence worldwide. This scarcity is the primary reason for the astronomical value. Each confirmed authentic example has been authenticated by major grading services such as PCGS or NGC, and their prices at auction have reflected just how sought after they are. In 2008, one example of a 1944 steel cent sold for over $370,000, and since then, the legend has only grown, with collectors speculating that some privately held specimens could be worth many times that amount, even up to the rumored $15 million when factoring in provenance, condition, and collector competition. Beyond just the steel era, there are copper coins from 1944 that also show striking anomalies. Some appear to have been struck on foreign coin blanks, resulting in slightly off weights, different shades of color, and unusual metallic properties. These coins are just as fascinating to study because they demonstrate the challenges and improvisations the mint faced during wartime production. Another variety, the 1944 D/S mint mark error, shows evidence that a Denver D mint mark was struck over a previously applied San Francisco S mint mark. These over mint mark varieties are prized by collectors because they represent human attempts to correct or reuse dies during a time when resources were scarce. Every time one of these rare 1944 pennies surfaces, it reignites debate and excitement in the coin collecting community. People often check their change jars, old penny rolls, and inherited coin collections, hoping to stumble upon one of these miraculous finds. What makes the story of the 1944 wheat penny even more thrilling is how it bridges ordinary life with extraordinary history, an everyday object that has survived decades, possibly sitting unnoticed in a jar or drawer, only to later reveal itself as a fortune. That sense of hidden potential, the dream that a single cent could change someone's life, is what keeps collectors and enthusiasts so passionate about coins like these. Over time, myths and rumors have surrounded the 1944 penny, with stories of people finding steel cents in circulation years later, or discovering them in inherited coin collections, not realizing their significance. The magnetic test has become a famous way to check if your 1944 penny sticks to a magnet. It could be one of those ultra-rare steel cents. Of course, there are counterfeits out there too, often made by coating copper cents with a silvery substance or altering the date on a 1943 steel cent to read 1944. That's why authentication by a professional service is so crucial. The condition of the coin also dramatically affects its value. A 1944 steel cent in heavily circulated or damaged condition might be worth tens of thousands, while a mint state example with sharp details and clean surfaces can reach into the millions. Collectors look for specific diagnostics, such as the shape of the numbers, the style of the lettering, and tiny die markers that can confirm a coin's authenticity and die pairing. The 1944 wheat penny, in all its forms, remains one of the most studied coins in numismatics because it represents the perfect storm of historical importance, minting error, and collector obsession. It's a reminder of how even small changes in materials and production can have massive long-term effects. When the mint switched from copper to steel and back to copper again, they could never have imagined that a few stray planchets would create coins that would one day be worth more than luxury homes or sports cars. Beyond its monetary value, the 1944 wheat penny stands as a symbol of human imperfection and historical chance. It shows how mistakes, sometimes unnoticed at the time, can become priceless decades later. Each of these rare coins tells a story of the people who worked at the mint, the machines that shaped them, and the unpredictable quirks of mass production under pressure. It's fascinating to think that while the world was focused on war and survival, tiny oversights inside the mint's production lines were quietly creating future treasures. The lore of the 1944 wheat penny has even extended into pop culture, with stories appearing in news articles, documentaries, and online auctions that fuel public fascination. People from all over the world are captivated by the idea that a simple American cent, a coin millions of people use daily without a second thought, could one day be worth a fortune. The $15 million rumor surrounding the rarest specimens only adds to the intrigue, symbolizing how rarity, condition, and historical accident combine to elevate an everyday object into something legendary. As years go by, fewer of these coins remain in private hands, and those that do are often locked away in secure collections or museum exhibits.